most easily identified complexities in literature is irony. So we got those three types of irony: dramatic irony, situational irony, and verbal irony. If you don't know which one it is, just use irony. It's a blanket term, you can use it. But remember, dramatic irony is when you as a reader know something that the characters don't know. So if there's ever a moment where that happens, like you know that Ernest is not really Ernest, his name is Jack, but that the character's clear. Gwendolyn doesn't know that. So if you get a situation like that, we call it dramatic irony. Situational irony is when a character tries to do something and it has the opposite effect. We just read a passage in the last essay that I assigned on the webpage in which a daughter is trying to win the affections of her estranged father, who is upper class now and she is not, and so she's trying to adopt his mannerisms and ideas, and it only makes him more angry at her because he more clearly sees her flaws. This is called situational irony. When a person tries to do something to have some effect and it actually has the opposite effect, that makes it ironic. That's complex. So that's useful to you, I think. And then we've got verbal irony, when somebody says something and the literal meaning of what they say, the opposite is true. So it's sort of like sarcasm, but sarcasm, we change our tone so that you know we're being sarcastic, whereas in verbal irony, it's like when somebody's like, hey, it's Honest Yago, he's such an honest guy. The opposite is actually true, but they're saying it and meaning it, and so it's verbally ironic. So you could pay attention to that. Poetic justice. This is useful too. If you have a situation in which somebody gets or does not get what they deserve in literature, that's always connected to theme. Why does the author not give a character what they deserve? Why does the author give a character what they deserve? What is the intended effect on the audience? These are questions you should ask. So poetic justice, when somebody gets what they deserve or doesn't get what they deserve. Social commentary, incredibly useful in a prose prompt. When you think about what the author is trying to teach, the answer is often social commentary. They're commenting on their society. They're a product of their times. What aspects of society, what aspects of human nature in general are they calling out? Especially useful to think about, do those aspects still exist today? In the passage from the Mayor of Casterbridge, in which the father valued manners above family, and social class made him estranged from his daughter because he valued his rank and position more than his blood ties. That's social commentary, that we live in a world, or at least, Thomas Hardy lived in a world where people put more value on social status than on their blood relationships. That's crazy. And he was commenting on that through the passage. And is that still applicable today? Sure, you bet. There's plenty of people that are more interested in the show of their social rank than they are in their relationships. And so you could take that and you could use that in your essay. So social commentary is really huge. I would put a star, a bold, and underline on that and try and find the social commentary in anything that you're reading, because boom, there's your theme. So you can look at social commentary. Satire, anytime that we're using social commentary in a funny way to sort of highlight a problem, we call that satire, and that's useful too. Aphorism, we had a lot of those in Oscar Wilde. Whenever there's a little pithy statement that you can take directly out of a text and slap on your wall, and it expresses a truth about the world, we call that an aphorism. We could talk about the protagonist and antagonist. If it's very clear who the protagonist and antagonist are in your passage and there's a conflict there, those are two terms you can use. Much better to use than hero or villain or main character. Just up your academic level by using the appropriate vocabulary. Setting. Remember, a setting has two elements: time and place. I've also said, and I think this is useful to you in writing a prose prompt, that every story is about sort of two settings. There's the setting in the story, its time and place, but there's also the setting of the author's own time and place. All art is autobiographical, meaning we can't write about what we haven't experienced. And even if I write something that's set, in the Middle Ages, in King Arthur's England, it's really about the time in which it was written, which is 2016 America. So you can't escape that. Let's see. I only have this book here because I was reading it online for a poetry thing. I don't carry my book around with me, I swear. That'd be weird and egotistical. Where was I? Setting. Narrator. You can do a lot with narrator. Why does the author choose this particular narrator? What's the narrative point of view? What's the narrative perspective? Does it change? Are there shifts in narrative point of view or narrative perspective? These are useful to you to chunk out your essay. But why would the author choose to have it in the first person or the third person or the second person? You almost never see anything in the second person. It's written to you. And that's weird. So normally you just get first person and third person. So we can look at that. Why would you choose one or the other of those? Third person's usually going to shift perspectives at some point in the story. Limited versus omniscient. Do we only know what a particular character knows? Why does the author choose to only let you know what a character knows? Does that develop dramatic irony? What's going on there? Or is the narrator omniscient? Does the narrator know everything that's going on and able to tell you everything? It's nice when there's shifts in perspective because you can see things from different angles, and a lot of times that develops complexity, and that's useful to you as a writer. Also, is it written in the past tense or the present tense? Does it feel like it already happened or that it is happening? Why does the author choose different tenses? Is there more immediacy and more tension in a present tense narrator than in a past tense narrator? Does it feel like things are happening? I don't know. So you want to think about the choices that the author makes and how the choices affect the experience of the reader. And one of those choices that's really, really useful is narrative perspective. Diction. Hey, there's another one you have to use an adjective in front of. If you're going to look at the word choice, why the author chose the words they chose, and this is a great one because when you analyze diction, when you analyze the word choice of the author, you're getting down in your analysis into nuance. You're getting down into like what the connotation of a word is, or a series of words, or why the author would bring this word up, and it connects with things like symbolism and imagery and all that kind of stuff. So diction's useful, but always underscore, star, highlight, always use an adjective before diction, because anybody who writes anything is using diction, is using word choice. But if you're going to analyze a word choice, you're going to have to say what kind of a word choice it is. Otherwise, your statement is nonsensical and it marks you out as inferior in your writing ability. So always use an adjective before diction. Dialogue. When characters are talking to each other, that's a lot of times where the complexity shows up. That's a lot of times where dramatic irony shows up. People don't understand each other, or the juxtaposition of ideas or attitudes shows up. So dialogue is really useful to you. Whenever an author writes dialogue, we're shifting perspectives. Even though the narrator might be a third-person omniscient narrator, the dialogue is coming from the perspective of the character. It's going to have the tone of the character. It's going to have the ideology and the viewpoint and the values and the idealism of the character. So look at the dialogue and consider, again, why did the author write it this way? How is the author differentiating characters and characters' viewpoints through dialogue? Dialogue is incredibly useful in a prose prompt. Monologue is a character that talks for a long time. Remember, monologue versus dialogue. Dialogue is two people talking. Monologue is just one person talking at you for a long period of time. So if you have a long, uninterrupted speech by a character, you can just throw the word monologue in there. It's not super useful. The other one I put on the list is selection of detail. The AP prompts love to have that in there. How's the author use selection of detail? Why do they choose? Now, selection of detail is sort of code for, imagery or symbolism or, tone or any of those other things. But what details, what things does the author focus on? Because we have characters, they're in a setting, they're interacting. What draws the eye of the author and thereby the eye of the reader, and why does the author choose those things? If you can think about those authorial choices, if you can pull yourself up from that level of magnification of understanding the plot to understanding why the author wrote it the way they did, then you're on the level of literary analysis and you should be good to go in your writing. So that's just a list of terms that hopefully are useful to you. And you can have them written down and sort of with you. But there's certainly a ton more terms. I didn't touch poetic terms at all. I didn't go back to, heroic, epic, and oral tradition or any of those things. We learned a lot of terminology in the class. But for a prose prompt, I think these are the ones that matter and that will help you out a lot. So hopefully the video is helpful. Again, if you have any questions, I'm here. You're taking this thing on Wednesday. Send me your questions. Send me your whatever I can do to help you. I have a light that's dying in here. Whatever I can do to help you, let me know. Best of luck, best wishes. Remember this exam. It's not a traditional exam. There's no way to get an A on this exam. This exam is a competition. It is a race. You're all lined up on the starting line. They're going to blow the whistle, and you got to go. And the people who finish the best are going to get the fives, and so you're not at a set point value where you have, if you do X well, you'll get X grade. It's how you compare to everyone else taking the test in the country. And that's kind of exciting, I'll be honest, because you get to sort of measure yourself on that yardstick against all the other test takers, and your goal is to end up on the top half of that pile. Make sure you're at a 3 or higher. But because it's only one essay, you have an opportunity here. If you get a prompt that you love, if you get something that you really understand, you can knock this out of the park, and there's nothing else to drag your grade down. So there's a bigger margin of error on this test. If you get a prompt you hate, sorry. But there's a bigger margin of error here because you don't have 3 essays. You don't have a multiple choice section. It's all your eggs in one basket. But if you get the right basket, that's great. You could have a 5. You could have, the highest grade on this exam. So give it your best shot. If you have questions, shoot them my way. I'd be happy to answer them. I hope you're all doing well. It's kind of sad that after this exam, it's sort of all over. Keep up with me. Come by and see me after school sometime, or send me a friend request on Facebook or a follow on Twitter or something, and we'll stay in touch. Anyway, best of luck on the exam, and I'll see you on the other side.